be seated. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for the delay, but as I said, there's going to be some times I need to take up things outside your presence, and that's exactly what I was doing. The state may call its next witness.
Your Honor, the state calls Lieutenant Thomas Leonard.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please have a seat. If you'll make sure your microphone is on by pressing the button there. Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Can you state your name and spell it for the court reporter?
Yes, it's Lieutenant Thomas Leonard, Leonard.
And where are you employed?
With the Scott County Sheriff's Office.
And I think you touched on this, but what is your position there?
Lieutenant, currently over a third shift.
And what is third shift?
The hours of 11 o'clock at night till 7 o'clock in the morning.
And can you describe what the duties of a lieutenant is compared to standard deputy, for lack of a better term?
Pretty much like a watch commander. I pretty much oversee all the deputies or the sheriff's operation during that time period.
And how long have you been a member of law enforcement?
17 years with Scott County, 22 years altogether in law enforcement.
And did you complete the police academy?
I did. In 2005, I completed the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy.
And are you a sworn peace officer in the state of Iowa?
Yes, I am.
And I assume you've been one since your graduation in 2005?
That is correct, sworn.
Were you on duty on the evening of March 13th into March 14th, 2024?
Yes, I was.
And were you dispatched to a single vehicle accident?
I was.
And do you remember what time that was?
That was roughly before the 2 o'clock, like 1:47, I believe the 911 call came in.
And that'd be 1:47 a.m.?
That is correct.
Where was the accident located?
It's located at the Davenport Municipal Airport. It was the entrance to the airport, so 90th and Harrison in Mount Joy, which is just north of Davenport or north of Interstate 80 there.
And what did you observe upon arriving on scene?
When I arrived on scene, I think that was at 1:55 a.m. when I arrived on scene. It was a silver Impala struck that there was a light pole with a concrete barrier. Struck that concrete barrier at probably, we don't know, rough speeds, probably around 45 miles an hour. That was the speed limit in that area. Severe front end damage to that vehicle at that location, and then I made contact with that individual at that time.
Okay. Staying on the location, what businesses probably isn't the right term, but what buildings were in the area or were close to that accident?
Well, like I said, it was the entrance of the airport, if that helps. Otherwise, it's the old Sears plant, used to be up in that general area. It would be just to the south of that. But otherwise, about half a mile to the west of Highway 61, which is 90th, that goes in that general area.
Are you familiar with the weather station?
The Quad City Weather Station or the Doppler radar, if that helps you guys, that's the location that would have been the entrance to where this took place at.
And you may have testified to this already, but was the driver on scene?
The driver was on scene, yes.
And where did you locate the driver?
The driver, when I originally located him, was unconscious or was coming to behind the driver's seat of that silver Impala.
And do you see the driver of that Impala in the courtroom today?
Yes, I do.
Can you identify him and state an article of clothing he's wearing?
Yes, he'll be to my right here. He's got the black tie on with a gray shirt on.
May the record reflect the witness identified the defendant?
The record shall so reflect.
Did you make contact with the defendant?
Yes, I was the first person to make contact with him.
And at that time, were you able to identify who it was?
I didn't know who he was, but he was able to provide me at least the first name of Chris, and then we were able to identify his last name through the registered owner's last name.
And you stated he was, unconscious or coming to when you first approached him?
Yes, he was coming to, very dazed when I first made contact with him. But yes, coming to.
Did you make any other observations of the defendant as you arrived on, to the vehicle?
As soon as I opened the door, the smell of an alcoholic beverage, very dazed, definitely signs of intoxication is what I was observing.
And what did you do at that point?
Just asked him basic questions, like where he was going, where he's coming from, things like that. Tried to get a feel of what was going on there. And then, of course, we're trying to get fire personnel there because of the accident. It was an unknown accident, to get him checked out.
Did he make any statements during this process?
Statements that he made was he did not know where he was going. He believed he was in the area of an auditorium along 80. He was believing he was at the hospital. I asked him why he didn't have shoes on. He didn't know that reason. There was a lot of statements that were made that weren't making sense to the whole situation, which I was trying to put together and investigate.
So he told you that he didn't have shoes on?
I asked him why he didn't have shoes on. He couldn't provide an answer to that.
Okay, so you observed him without shoes?
That is correct.
Did you observe shoes anywhere in the vehicle that he could have been wearing at some point?
Nowhere in his vicinity, no.
Did you see any weapons?
So as we got the seatbelt removed, things like that, before I turned over to fire personnel to have him checked out, there was a knife that was located at his feet. So I actually removed the knife for my safety and for his safety, so he wouldn't cut himself or anything like that on his feet.
At this point in the investigation, what potential crimes would you be investigating?
All we had right now was the operating while intoxicated.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
Pending the witness must be marked. Pending the witness must be marked as State's Exhibit 29. You put on a pair of gloves, and then open that box.
All right.
And while you're doing that, make sure you don't show that to the jury until it's admitted into evidence.
That's correct.
Is it possible while he's doing so that he indicate what he's cutting through, just so the jury's informed?
That would, I'll ask the witness to do so.
Yes, so we have evidence to seal on here, so that makes sure the item isn't tampered with during that time period. So it's been sealed by the detective or officer that ended up putting it in here. They initial case, put a date on it, along with their badge number. So that way we know, make sure it's been not tampered with.
Okay. Do you recognize the contents of that box?
Yes, I do.
And can you tell me what it is?
This would be the knife that was located at the foot of the driver of that vehicle.
Okay. Do you recognize that as the knife that you recovered on in the early morning hours of March 14th, 2024 from that vehicle?
Yes, that's the knife I removed from the vehicle.
Okay. Your Honor, the state would move to admit Exhibit 29.
No objection, State 29, Your Honor.
Exhibit 29 will be admitted.
Okay. Permission to show it to the jury?
You may.
If you could show that knife to the jury.
Okay. Knife. Make sure all you guys can see it.
Okay. Thank you. I'll retrieve that and put it back on the table. The knife you just viewed, is that in substantially the same condition as when you first retrieved it from the vehicle?
Again, the weather that night was pouring down rain. So when I removed it, I took it outside the vehicle, put it on top, and put it on the trunk also. As I moved it throughout twice before I put it back in the vehicle, it would have had more blood on it at that point. But due to the rain, it was pretty much, the blood came off.
And can you give us a sense for how hard it was raining that evening?
It was a good downpour during this whole situation.
So you said you retrieved the knife, you set it on the Impala?
Originally set it on top while the fire was dealing with him, and I also put it to the trunk at one point.
Okay, and what did you ultimately do with that knife?
Once we turned the driver over to medic for transport to the hospital, we realized it had nothing to do with what we were investigating, so I put it back in the vehicle to be towed away with the vehicle.
Who else arrived on scene other than you?
Right behind me, Deputy Turner, Jake Turner.
And were there medic personnel?
Yes, medic and fire personnel from Davenport Police or Fire Department.
Okay. Did you observe any injuries on the defendant on scene?
One of the questions I asked him if he was injured or if he had any pain, he indicated that he had pain to his waist area at that point, and then one of the fire chiefs of Davenport came over towards the end of my dealings out there and said that they found a laceration.
I'll have you stop right there.
Yep.
Did you personally observe any injuries?
I did not.
Okay. Were you wearing a body camera that night?
I was.
And was it functioning properly?
It was.
And have you reviewed that body camera footage from that evening?
I have.
And was it a fair and accurate depiction of what you observed?
It is.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
And the witness must be marked as Exhibit 55, which is the body camera from that evening. You said it was a fair and accurate depiction of that evening.
It would be, yes.
Your Honor, the state moves to introduce State's Exhibit 55.
Your Honor, I have no objection. I just want to indicate that this was provided to us prior to it being offered today in its redacted form, and we'd had an opportunity to review it in full, so again, we have no objection.
Exhibit 55 will be admitted.
Thank you. Permission to publish?
You may.
Okay, before I play the video, do you see that pointer behind you?
Yes.
I want to point out a couple of things. First of all, in the upper right-hand corner, there's some, it says 3/14/2024. Would that be the correct date that this body camera footage is taken from?
That is correct, and time.
And then right after that, it says 01/54/51. That would be 1:54 a.m.
Correct.
Okay. Go ahead and play it. Pause it, trying to figure out why the sound isn't playing.
Mr. Larson, we sometimes have this issue. If you want to take a few moments to work on that, we can excuse the jury just for a few moments.
We, maybe try it one more way and then we can excuse them. I
Sure.
think I maybe have it
Sure.
troubleshot. Then again, maybe I don't. So if we can take a few moments.
Ladies and gentlemen, we do our best with the technology, but sometimes we do have these issues. I'm sure you experience the same thing in your own personal lives. So we'll adjourn just for a moment. I would remind you of your admonition. Please do not discuss this case amongst yourselves, and please continue to keep an open and attentive mind. Mr. Larson, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm now starting Exhibit 55 from the beginning.
Can you wake up for me? Buddy, can you look at me? Are you alright?
Yeah.
You were in an accident. Do you know that?
No.
Where were you heading to? Do you know where you're at all or anything?
Yeah, I was going to the auditorium.
Where were you heading, you think?
The auditorium.
The auditorium?
Yeah.
Where's the auditorium at?
The ADM. ADM.
What's your name?
Christian.
Chris? Chris E.M.?
Chris Levy. Oh.
Okay. Since I have a Chris, I don't have the last name yet. All right, I'm going to have fire personnel check you out here in a second, all right?
Yeah.
Just seeing what else we have over there. Nothing over there? All right. Whose car is this? You don't know whose car it is?
Nope.
Okay, all right.
He said his name's Chris?
Yeah, it's him. That's the same last name. All right. Okay. Can you hit the seatbelt over there for me?
Yeah.
Nothing on you, right?
Nope.
Okay, what hurts on you right now?
No, nothing other than my waist bone.
Your waist hurts?
Yeah, my waist.
Your waist hurts there? Okay. All right, these fire guys are going to talk to you real quick. Make sure you're okay. I'm going to step out of the way.
Hi. I just recently dealt with it.
Oh, he's
99 too.
is he? I'm guessing he's wasted too, so he's on something.
I'm going to pause it right there for a moment. We're at, according to the time on the body camera, 1:56 a.m. and 57 seconds. We see another deputy or uniformed individual in the picture. Can you tell us who that is?
That would be Deputy Jake Turner.
Okay. I'll continue.
There's an auditorium. He's going to the auditorium by 80, wherever that's at. Oh, he's going to be transported, so we probably just... I'll take care of Fred's if you want to go to the hospital, read him, like him, sign, all that stuff. County 6, go ahead and sign your Fred's. So where are you bleeding at down here? Your foot's all got blood on it. Where's your shoes at? Do you know where your shoes are at?
No.
Okay. Did you just jump in the vehicle from...
Yeah.
Where'd you leave from then?
Not sure.
Not sure? Alright. When you get... why is there's a knife down by your foot, so I want to make sure I move that, okay? So...
If you want to go foot, I'll put my foot
Alright.
in front of my head.
Alright. You didn't cut yourself tonight at all, did you?
Nope.
Alright. But you say you don't remember where you were coming from?
Nope.
Not at all?
Nope.
Girlfriend's house, your house, anybody's house?
Not really sure.
Okay. So do you know where you're at right now?
Hospital, I'm pretty sure.
Your hospital is where you're thinking you're at?
That's I'm pretty sure.
No. You're over by the airport.
Oh,
Do
okay.
you know how you got there?
Nope.
No? Okay. All right. Beautiful weather for this.
All right.
Okay, the knife you retrieved on that video, was that the same knife that you identified previously?
That would be the same knife, yes.
What did you do after this video ended as part of your investigation?
With this investigation, I pretty much did the accident report on this incident here, and then stood by until Fred's, the tow company, arrived, so we could tow the vehicle away from there.
And at that point, did you clear the accident?
I did a little bit further investigation, trying to figure out why he was, the driver was at that location, because like I said, nothing was making sense what he was saying. Through our CAD system, which is our dispatch system. We could actually see local information on the driver. We could see where he lived at in prior calls. So I did a little bit of digging in there, and I actually had another deputy respond back up to 105 Crestview Drive, number 4, which was the registered known address for him and then his girlfriend, Taylor Escontrias.
You said you dispatched another deputy to the 105 Crestview, apartment number 4.
That is correct.
What deputy did you dispatch to that location?
Deputy Raby is who I dispatched.
And for our court reporter, do you know how to spell Raby?
Raabe.
And do you recall when you would have dispatched Deputy Raby to that apartment?
I believe that was right around the 2:25 a.m.
And what, I guess, is it normal to dispatch a deputy to check a residence as part of an OWI investigation?
Not normal, but with what he was saying on scene, I wanted to make sure, figure out why he was coming from where he was coming from, things like that, and also to check on her to make sure she was all right also.
And are you aware of the outcome of that welfare check?
Yes, Deputy Raby called me back minutes later after he arrived there. He knocked on the door multiple times. He actually said he called the phone number that we had listed for Taylor, but no answer. I actually asked if there was anything suspicious, and at that point, he indicated there was nothing suspicious at that residence.
At that time, was any further action taken with respect to that apartment?
Nothing for that apartment, no.
As far as you're concerned, was your OWI investigation over at that point?
It was turned over to Deputy Turner at that point, which followed medic to the hospital with the driver.
Okay, but your involvement, at least direct involvement, was done with the OWI investigation?
It was.
Was that your last involvement with the broader investigation that would later ensue?
Roughly a little bit before 4 o'clock a.m., I received a phone call or a request to call Deputy Turner, which was currently at the hospital.
And what did you do after being called by Deputy Turner?
I made contact with Deputy Turner, and he made a statement that
not offering it for the truth, we're offering it so he can explain his investigative action.
Perceived by the jury as truth, I would just ask that you rephrase his question.
If you could rephrase the question, please.
Okay, without telling us what Deputy Turner told you, what were the next steps that you took in the investigation?
I made the decision that we're going to do a welfare check back at 105 Crestview Drive, number 4.
And did you dispatch, did you do that, or did you dispatch someone to do that, or how did that happen?
Pretty much my closest unit at that time was Deputy Slagle, Slagle. Dispatched him to that address, and we arrived roughly around 4:12 a.m. We both arrived about the same time.
To the 105 Crestview address?
105 Crestview address, correct.
And I don't know if you've stated what town is that in?
That would be Parkview, so it actually has an Eldridge address, but it is actually Parkview, Iowa.
And you said you went to that apartment.
Correct.
What did you do when you arrived to that apartment?
Actually, I arrived with Deputy Slagle. I had him knock on the door. I believe it was at least twice. We announced ourselves, and then I had him check the door handle, because at that point, we knew we were going to make a welfare check into that residence to make sure Taylor or any individuals in the apartment were okay.
Okay, so you and Deputy Slagle are immediately outside of that apartment, is that correct?
That is correct, apartment number 4.
And then at least one of you knocks on the door?
That is correct.
And was that you or Deputy Slagle?
Deputy Slagle.
Did anyone answer or respond to those knocks?
After, I think it was probably a minute or so, no answer, no movement. We were listening to make sure we could hear anything inside. We couldn't hear anything.
Okay, and did either one of you end up making entry to that apartment?
Yes, after we verified the door was unlocked, I had Deputy Slagle go ahead and make entry to that apartment.
And did you make any observations when he opened or made entry to the apartment?
The first statement that came out of Deputy Slagle's mouth was, "Oh shit," and then I asked what he had, and we found a deceased female right behind the door.
What happened then?
Pretty much I gave the order that we have to clear the apartment because we have to secure the scene. So both myself and Deputy Slagle made entry, secured the location, make sure that we had no other victims inside, and then no other people in the residence, and then we secured the residence at that point.
Okay, and you kind of touched on this, but what was the purpose of clearing the apartment?
Pretty much a safety check and for make sure we had no other people that were hurt in there, along with no suspects or any other individuals.
What observations did you make inside of the apartment?
As soon as we made entry, like I said, we had a deceased body up against the door. We had actually somewhat step over her to get in. Right away, we observed a baseball bat that was on the couch. There was a lot of blood, pretty much from the kitchen area to where the body was at. On the walls, it was a lot of blood.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
Pending the witness what's been marked as State's Exhibit 23. I gotta have you put your gloves on, Lieutenant Leonard. And then here's a pair of scissors. You can narrate if you're breaking any seals, you're doing anything of that. I'll have you open that and look at it. Don't show it to the jury at this point.
Okay. Got the one of the lab seal, which is from the Department of Investigations. Go ahead and cut that one, making sure that it hasn't been tampered with. I'll go ahead and, for you guys.
Okay, do you recognize that item in that box?
This would resemble the bat that was on the couch when we made entry that night.
Okay, and does it appear to be in substantially the same condition as when you first observed it in the apartment?
Of what I recall, yes.
Okay, and where was that located?
That was located on the couch, pretty much you can say the living room of that apartment. So right inside the door, the couch was there, and this was on the couch.
Your Honor, the state moves to introduce State's Exhibit 23.
No objection, State's 23, Your Honor.
Exhibit 23 will be admitted.
Permission to publish.
You may.
If you could show that to the jury.
It's loose on the bottom down there, so I just want to make sure it doesn't fall out.
Thank you. May I approach the witness?
You may.
Can you describe the bat when you found it that evening? Or did you make any observations of the bat other than it was a bat?
Just pretty much it was a bat. Like I said, we made entry just for the reasonings of securing it, and then we got out of that residence just so until we can get a search warrant later on, and then we could do our investigation.
Okay, so at that point, what's the main focus of being in the apartment?
It was just securing the location and make sure, like I said, make sure we had no other victims inside or suspects.
Did medics arrive?
A medic arrived, yes, about by 4:35, I believe, roughly in that time period.
And do you remember, did you recognize the medics, or the medic that arrived?
It was our local medic individuals. I don't have their names.
Okay. Were they granted access to the apartment?
Yes, so immediately we started a log indicating who enters and leaves that apartment, because that's what we do in crime scenes like this. But yes, those names were recorded so medic could actually step in and call the time of death.
And did you observe them perform their duties?
I was actually outside at that time. Deputy Slagle was the one in charge of the log.
And what did they do once they were done with their examination?
They left.
And at this stage, was anyone else granted access to the apartment?
At that time, no one else was granted access.
Okay, and what was being done during that time frame?
At that time point, it was applying for a search warrant, getting all that information to the judge or magistrate to make entry to that apartment so we could start our investigation.
And was a search warrant obtained?
Later on that morning, yes, a search warrant was obtained.
Okay, so from when the time, or other than what you've described, from the time you arrived on scene, and you and Deputy Slagle entering, and then the medics, was anyone else allowed on the scene until the search warrant was obtained?
As far as we made it was to the number 4, the door itself. Otherwise, no one was past that until the search warrant was obtained.
Did all these events occur, excuse me, did you have any further involvement that evening with the investigation?
Besides turning everything over to investigation, into our criminal investigation division, no,
Okay, and this all happened in Scott County, Iowa?
it did.
Okay, no further questions.
Mr. Puentes?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Lieutenant.
Morning.
I'm gonna ask you to bear with me here. Sometimes I appear a little non-linear. If I should deviate from chronology, just kind of, again, try to answer my questions the best of your ability. So, you first receive a call, I believe your testimony was at approximately 1:47 a.m. From SECC, which is what? Scott Emergency, answer the rest of that for me.
Communication Center.
Perfect, and that's the 911 dispatching, is that right?
That is correct for Scott County.
And it was reported that there was a single vehicle accident, is that right?
Yes,
And you took approximately 8 minutes to arrive on scene, is that correct?
that would be about right, yes.
All right, and as you arrived on scene 8 minutes later, you found Mr. Behal in the driver's seat just coming to, is that right?
That is correct.
All right, and he was the only occupant, the solo occupant inside of this vehicle, is that correct?
That would be correct.
And you saw significant front-end damage, is that right?
Correct.
And this was, again, a single vehicle accident, but it struck sort of like a concrete barricade in front of some sort of a light assembly, is that correct?
Pretty much the circle concrete barrier around a light pole.
Okay. The video does a great job, obviously, of illustrating the vehicle and kind of its condition, but I want to show you some images. Permission to approach?
You may.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as proposed defense exhibits B, C, and D. Just bear with me for a moment while I mark them. As is always the case, just look at them first. They're not yet admitted. So I'll just ask that you review them briefly. Tell me if you're familiar with what's depicted in those images.
So this would be the silver Impala from that night.
The same Impala that was operated, at least it's your belief, was operated by Mr. Behal, given he was in the driver's seat, is that correct?
Due to the damage and everything, I would say this would be the vehicle.
Now, that's no longer on the scene, is that correct?
Yes, this would probably be the Fred's location.
But nevertheless, the condition of that vehicle had not been changed, at least as to its sort of external, the way it's depicted in the photos.
This would be what I seen that night, yes.
Okay, and does it fairly accurately depict what you recall seeing on that date?
Yes.
All right. Move to admit defense exhibits B, C, and D.
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibits B, C, and D will be admitted.
Permission to briefly publish.
You may.
I'm just going to show you defense exhibit B because I think it probably does the best job of just kind of displaying what I'm here to talk about. That is the vehicle as you found it again, correct?
Correct.
The vehicle again operated by Christopher Behal, is that correct?
Correct.
The term that I've always been familiar with is intrusion, which sort of illustrates the depth in which, in this case, the concrete barrier went within the front compartment of the vehicle. Is that a word you're familiar with?
I've heard, yes, I am.
Can you approximate, if you don't know with certainty, how much intrusion exists in this vehicle?
I'm not an accident investigator on that, so intrusion, no, I wouldn't be able to help you there.
Okay. Would you describe this as significant front-end impact?
I would say yes.
Thank you. Now, I believe your testimony is that you approximated the speed of the vehicle to be about 45, and I think that was informed by the posted speed limit being that 45, correct?
That would be the rough, yes, that would be correct.
Okay. And when you arrived on scene, we already discussed this, but you saw Mr. Behal just coming to, is that correct?
Correct.
And we know that the call came in at approximately 1:47, and you arrived 8 minutes later, which suggests it took him approximately 8 minutes to come to.
Somewhere in that time period, yes.
And once you were in a position to observe the sort of the cabin or the internal compartment of the vehicle, you saw that there was airbag deployment, is that right?
I did see that.
Which in your experience is just indicative of front-end impact, is that correct?
Certain speeds cause the airbag to deploy, but yes, front end damage or rear end depends.
All right. And I want to talk about the interior compartment of that just for a moment. Did you observe any shards of metal exposed?
I do not recall.
Okay. The video, again, I guess would be the best evidence of what the inside of that vehicle looked like?
Correct.
Okay, but nothing specifically stands out to you now, nothing specifically listed in your report, correct?
Correct.
All right. Do you recall seeing any sort of like sharp or jutting plastic inside of that motor vehicle?
Inside the vehicle, no.
Okay. Now, upon approach, Mr. Behal started speaking to you. I don't recall if it was sort of spontaneous or if it was in response to a question, but there was some conversation that took place, is that right?
There was.
All right. And at least a portion of the comments given by Mr. Behal were nearly unintelligible, is that correct?
Yes.
And it was at least in part kind of because of slurring, or at least what sounded like slurring on the video, is that fair to say?
Correct.
Okay. Now at this point, I mean, given your experience and kind of common sense really, it did appear that this individual was obviously intoxicated.
We were going to investigate it as an OWI, or operational intoxicated, yes.
Okay. But given, again, your training experience, it's also quite possible he was, in conjunction with that, also concussed. Is that fair to say?
Correct.
Okay. Now, with respect to the answers he gave you, he seemed confused, for lack of better words, about sort of where he was going and where he even was at the moment that you arrived. Is that correct?
Yes.
He was very clearly inside of a motor vehicle, parked on the side of the road. Maybe parked is a little incorrect, but nevertheless, not in a hospital, which is very clearly where he thought he was, correct?
Correct.
All right. Now, circling back to what was found inside the vehicle, one of which has already been admitted, that was the knife. I think it was State's Exhibit 29, is that right? I'm not quizzing you on the exhibit number, but it is the knife, correct?
It would be the knife is what I located, yes.
All right. And my assumption, and correct me if I'm mistaken, at the time that you removed it from the vehicle, it was less about preserving evidence and more about ensuring officer safety.
Officer safety and his safety, due to the fact that it was at his feet and he was going to have to step on it or step over it or something like that.
Sure, and that's why instead of moving it, I guess, inside of the cabin, you placed it on top or out of reach of Mr. Behal, is that correct?
Correct.
In this case, that was on top of the vehicle while it was in pouring down rain.
That is correct.
Okay. Now, it is rather evident from the video, Mr. Behal was very sluggish, but would you agree he was at all times compliant?
No, he was compliant. He was trying to answer the questions, things like that. So yes, he was compliant.
And with respect to that, did it appear to you to be theater, or did it appear to be just a very dazed, intoxicated individual?
Dazed and intoxication.
So it didn't seem like he was faking it or pulling your leg, I guess is what I'm getting at.
No.
Now, he had uttered to you something about having pain on his left side, I think. Strike that. He indicated to you that he was having pain near his waist, is that correct?
Correct.
At that point, I don't think he identified which side, did he?
believe it was just waste. He may have pointed that direction to the left side.
Okay, and you already testified you never actually sort of directly observed the injury, is that
I
correct?
did not observe the injury, no.
Do you know throughout the investigation whether it was identified that he did in fact have an injury?
Through the investigation, I was told where the injury was located at.
Okay. And did you at least observe any sort of blood or marks on his clothing that suggested an injury might be contained underneath it?
Correct, with the blood on his shorts, on his feet that were indicated in the video. So yes, blood on the left side of his body, what I observed.
Which at least appeared to you as though he may have been actively bleeding, is that correct?
Correct, he was involved with an accident.
Now, within the compartment of the vehicle, I do also want to discuss this briefly. Did you see any alcohol used or otherwise within the cabin of that vehicle?
There's no other alcohol located inside that vehicle.
So there's no indication that he was drinking on the scene, is that correct?
That would be correct.
All right. Just want to ensure sort of, I guess, accuracy. The relevant times, and maybe that's just my opinion, but the important times are dispatch at 1:47, correct?
Correct.
Approximate arrival at 1:55 a.m., correct?
Correct.
And these are on March 14th, 2024, correct?
That would be correct.
You first instructed, or at least the first arrival at the domicile on Crestview, or the Crestview Apartments, I guess I should say, was at 2:25 a.m., is that correct?
Oh, correct. When Deputy Raby would have went back up there, would have been roughly around the 2:25 hour.
And then when you, along with Officer Slagle, I believe, arrived, that was at 4:12 a.m., is that right?
4:12 when we arrived at, on the address on Crestview, yes.
Okay, so the difference of arrival on scene and entry into the apartments was approximately 3.5-ish hours.
That would be correct.
Okay. Now, the relevant apartment number was number 4, is that correct?
Yes.
All right, and if you know, what was the apartment number directly below apartment 4?
That should be number 2 below.
And did you personally discern, or I guess identify at any point in time, who was the occupant of apartment 2?
I did not.
Okay. Now, I do want to discuss a little bit about your training experience, just because I think it's a useful tool for the jury here. You were obviously, at least in part, investigating an OWI upon your arrival, is that correct?
Yes.
And you learn about sort of investigating, and maybe processing is a fair word, OWIs in the Law Enforcement Academy, is that right?
Yes, and I'm also OWI instructor for the deputies and officers in Scott County.
Okay, so if you could approximate how much training related to OWI, investigations of OWIs do you possess?
So the initial training for all officers is going to be 40 hours at the academy for OWI. That's pretty much identifying, seeing everything, and then also running through them to standardized field sobriety testing, along with the use of the Data Master, which is the machine that is used to calculate the blood alcohol level on an individual. And then we usually have about every 2 years, we have an additional 2 to 3 hours of training reference this to keep everybody up to date on their training and experience when it comes to OWIs.
And it's always been my understanding with respect to the Law Enforcement Academy, and maybe some of your other training, that there's always kind of a wet and dry testing component, is that correct?
That would be correct.
Can you explain what that is?
So pretty much what that is we bring actually, we'll usually, lately we've been using like nurses that will come down, we'll actually get them to about a 0.08 level in a secured environment, and actually have our officers run them through a field sobriety test and see where they're at, and pretty much judge our officers where they're at, making sure they're doing the test correctly. So we're actually doing like a wet lab for our officers.
And what is the purpose of seeing people in an intoxicated state in that particular training?
So the officers can actually see what they have in front of them, and also when it comes to the test that we're looking for with the field sobriety, we can indicate what their blood alcohol level is during that time period, or even if there's another drug that we may have to be looking at.
Now, you'd referenced a threshold of .08. What is the significance of that?
So in the state of Iowa, the per se level is actually .085, but the legal limit to operate a vehicle, mostly across the United States, is a .08 blood alcohol level.
Have you ever ascertained why? Like, why is that number kind of the line of demarcation for whether or not you can operate or not operate a motor vehicle?
So that's pretty much where they draw the line of intoxications. Again, not everywhere across the country is that way. There's some that are going lower at this point, but that's the line that I guess society has picked as the intoxication level at this point.
Have you observed in your training experience, and this includes your field time, responding, all that stuff, a difference in sort of levels of impairment? In other words, like, people that respond differently to alcohol.
Yes, correct. There's different levels, different people handle it different ways, things like that, yes.
Can you just give me some examples of things you've seen with respect to like how different people may act?
It just depends on the size of the person, how small, but usually you always have like the slurred speech, the falling down, unable to comprehend. It's multitasking. It's usually when a person's intoxicated, they can't multitask. And that's a lot of the tests that we do kind of looks at that.
Do you see, I guess, changes in like cognition, like their understanding?
Correct. They're unable to comprehend what you're saying, or at least give you the answer and move forward from there. Yeah.
Okay. If I said a blood alcohol content was 300 or more, what does that mean to you?
That's extremely high for an individual. We do see it. But that's one of the high numbers that we usually see for an operating while intoxicated or blood alcohol level.
How impaired are those people as it relates to someone who might be at .08, for example?
Majority of the population at .3 probably would not be awake when it comes down to it. If that's extremely high for most people, but if they do drink often, things like that, that is a possibility to be that high. Just shows that they have extreme tolerance when they're at a .3 or anything higher than that.
But those people would still be impaired, they would just be awake.
Correct. They're still impaired, definitely.
One moment. Nothing further, thank you.
Any further redirect?
Briefly, Your Honor. Mr. Puentes asked you about whether the defendant had a concussion or appeared to have a concussion. Just to be clear, I mean, do you know whether he had a concussion or not?
No, that's why I would have medical check him out at that point.
The pain that the defendant described on his left side, did he ever report to you how he incurred that pain or injury?
I asked if he ended up doing that injury to himself. No.
And the blood that you saw in the vehicle, was that abnormal based on the car accident scene that you were also observing?
That would be normal on that situation, plus fire and medic personnel were already there, so I'm going to give it to the people that know what they're doing to check him over in that situation.
Also want to ask you a little bit about people functioning at different levels. So you said you're the OWI and like field or instructor for Scott County?
One of the couple, there's a few instructors for Scott County, but yes, I am one of them.
So have you observed individuals kind of along the whole spectrum of, you know, being not intoxicated at all to being highly intoxicated?
Correct. There is a range from pretty much showing no signs and then all the way to being passed out.
Okay. And if you have someone that's, let's say they just turned 21 and they've never had a drop of alcohol in their life, from what you've seen in your training and experience, or how would you expect that person to act at .08 compared to a heavy drinker?
If they're not used to it, majority of the people, if not all, but majority of the people would be showing a lot of signs of intoxication, unable to speak in a way, stumbling. You'll see that more if it's a person that's not used to it, or in that area, .08, .1, in that area, general area.
Okay, and if we keep going until someone's highly intoxicated, I think Mr. Fuentes threw out higher than 300. Have you seen people function better than others at that level?
People do function at that, but majority of the time that we've always seen them are the ones that are pretty much, alcohol is a norm for them, is what it comes down to, if they have blood alcohol level over .3 or higher.
Okay, so someone that, you said blood out, or kind of using alcohol is the normal for them, are they able to function at that high of a level?
Yeah, we run into people that can function at that level, yes.
Okay, no further questions.
Mr. Fuentes?
Very briefly, I understand you're not a medical professional, is that fair to say?
Very low level, but yes, no,
But you've been doing this for a very long time, correct?
yes,
You've seen a lot of things, is that correct?
I have.
And in this particular case, you saw a motor vehicle with significant front end damage, is that correct?
Correct,
Airbag deployment, is that correct?
that would be correct.
And a person who was rendered unconscious and simply coming to in the area of 8 minutes, is that correct?
Yes,
Do you think it's a logical leap to conclude a person may have a head injury?
it's a possible with a head injury, yes.
Thank you, nothing further.
Nothing
Mr.
further.
Wilson? All right, you may step down.
All right, thank you.
We are at 10:30. I think we'll take our morning break at this time. Ladies and gentlemen, I would remind you of your admonition. Please do not discuss this case amongst yourselves. Please continue to keep an open and attentive mind. We'll be in adjournment for approximately 10 to 15 minutes. Thank you.
All rise for the jury.